Well, it's 8 o'clock. It's not Tuesday night or normal night, but it is that time, and you know what time that is. It's time for the Sim Racing Podcast, also known as the Joe Six-Pack Racing Podcast. And on occasions during our Cup season with the 802 iRacing Leagues, we also do the 802 Cup Series podcast for that league. I'm your host, Greg Draiss, and we talk about all things sim racing. And we focus a lot on iRacing, but we've had NASCAR people on here. We've had photographers, videographers, all aspects of racing. Want to give a shout out to our new sponsor, sponsoring the Joe Six-Pack Racing team in the BG Graphics 802 Late Model Series, Dirtbag Clothing, an American original, and I love their logo. Wear them till it stinks. Also, Riptide Radio, who is a sponsor in the 802 Cup Series, as well as the BG Graphics 802 Late Model Stock Series. I want to thank Jeff Barefoot for that. Riptide Radio is Carolina Shag. It's an internet radio station, and if you'd never heard Carolina Shag, it's a little bit of everything. It's a lifestyle, it's dance music, it's the stuff you'd listen to when you're at the beach. And it is Motown, it is jazz, it is swing, it is yacht rock. It's all over the road, and it's all over the beach, and Riptide Radio gives us a random winner in every race, $5 in iRacing credits, and we want to thank them for sponsoring everything. And of course, BG Graphics, the sponsor for the 802 Late Model Series, which we just started last week at North Wilkesboro. And luckily, me, who really stinks at short tracks, I qualified 16th in the start for the main heat, finished in 8th place. And for me, that's almost like winning. So tonight we got a special guest with us tonight. We're going to welcome Dimitri. Dimitri, I am not even going to try your last name until you pronounce it for me about 5 or 6 times. So Dimitri's out in Vancouver, British Columbia. He's a racing fan, and he's been on iRacing for a couple of years. So welcome, Dimitri, and how do you pronounce your last name?
Oh, thanks for having me on first.
You're welcome.
I guess you can pronounce it Ganotsionis.
Okay.
It's a Greek name, obviously.
Yep.
I'm not going to say it the Greek way, but Ganotsionis would be probably the best way to break it down.
I was pretty close. I was going to say Ganotsionis, so it's Ganotsionis.
That's good too, yeah.
Okay.
I've heard everything in my life, gracias, and all that stuff.
Well, my last name is spelled D as in David, Raiss. It's pronounced with a long I, like Draiss. I've been called Draiss, 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 and some people on the customer service, I'm like, you're not even trying. I think one time they said Smith, and I said close enough.
So you've got gracias and Draiss. So
yeah, pretty close. I mean, Ganotsionis almost sounds like a greeting.
Yeah, it does, actually. Like, some people think it's Spanish, but no, it's 100% Greek, and it's one of the shorter Greek names. There's ones out there 25, 30, letters long, so I got lucky with a shorter one.
I guess you did. So let's get into a little bit about your racing experience. I know you said you're 43 and you're out there on British Columbia, up there in Vancouver, and you almost aged yourself. I'm 61. When I saw ColecoVision on there, I'm like, whoa, this guy's almost in my generation. So, and you said you were 8 years old playing on ColecoVision. What was your first video game on ColecoVision?
Pitfall.
Oh, like the little the little ping pong game?
The guy, no, Pitfall.
Oh, Pitfall!
Who swung on the ropes? He was like in a jungle.
Yes, okay, I remember that game.
Yeah, Pitfall and River Raid.
Okay. I don't remember River Raid, but I remember Pitfall. It's like the little George of the Jungle or Tarzan guy, right?
Swing. Like he was like it was current time, like for that time.
Oh yeah.
And then Frogger,
Yep.
I think Huber was my favorite.
Okay, I remember playing Frogger in many nightclubs when I wasn't driving and had one or two too many to drink, and I don't think I did very well.
Yeah, those were they don't make games like that anymore. Those games were fun.
They were, because they were so simple. I remember playing one of the very first ones. It was like ping pong. and it
Oh,
was two little bars lines that went up and down, and you hit this little very pixelated tennis ball or ping pong ball. It would bounce all over the place, and the shadow would follow behind it, kind of like when you could, on the old Windows programs, where you could have your cursor and have like the little shadow follow behind you.
I think that was just called Pong.
Pong was the first one, yeah.
Yeah, that's the first one, yeah.
Yep. And that, I think, what was it? You had to put it on channel 3 on your TV or something like that, because you could only hook them up to your TV.
Yeah, and then you had to put the RF adapter on the back.
Yep.
So, yeah, I remember, it was a much more a civilized game for a more civilized time.
Right, because you could only play by yourself. You weren't playing against some dungeon weirdo, on the other side of the planet somewhere or across the street.
Yeah, no.
So, and when did you start racing video games?
Oh, it would have been just around that time, maybe a few years later, like on the Nintendo, like Super or Sprint, Off-Road, California Dreamin'. These were like the beginning sort of like racing games.
Sure.
Or I think this one was actually on the ColecoVision. I think it was called Oil Slick or something. So those were like kind of like the older like racing games, 2D.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And
so I started there, and then they sort of got more advanced a little bit, like in the Super Nintendo. Like then you had like Super Off-Road and like Super Sprint. So
did you ever?
That's where I started.
And how good were you in those games?
I was like really good.
Good for you.
I don't toot my own horn, but I just tell the truth.
Yep.
If I'm bad at something, I'll say I'm bad. But because I loved racing games, I put a lot of like time. And of course, you're like 8, 9. I mean, what else are you gonna do? You go to school and then you come home and play video games,
right?
Whatever. So I put a lot of time into the. It's hard to gauge how good you are because you weren't against anybody, but
right.
I feel like I was really good.
Okay, so you were still back in the day when you were just racing, basically racing the computer.
Yeah, you race the AI, and or you just hot lap and you just tried to beat your own.
There you go.
Record.
Okay. Now I've heard of Forza 1. And my recollection of that game, that was one of the better ones.
I think it's the best one. That was
okay.
I think that one really, that one probably blew the doors open for me. It was on the original Xbox. It was a near launch title. It was just like the graphics at that point hadn't been seen to that level. This is like 2001 or 2002, and I just was blown away by the graphics and the gameplay. And at that point, I don't think sim racing existed. It was just racing.
Yeah.
It felt kind of hard, but again, I poured hours into it. I made my own paint on it.
Oh, cool.
It was, that was probably still my favorite of all time.
Now, at that point, you were on Xbox. Could you at that point play against other players, or was that not quite the norm yet?
Xbox Live came into effect because of Halo. So that was the big thing, was Halo. In Forza, the first one, I didn't play online. Did it have online? I'm not sure. I don't think so. Not until maybe the second one. But it was in its infancy back then. I think when Halo kind of launched, that kind of blew the floodgates open for online console gaming.
Okay.
Of course, PC already had, and PC you already played online with Counter-Strike and other games, but for console it was kind of the beginning.
Gotcha. So what did you do between, let's say, Forza 1 and when you found iRacing a couple years ago during the pandemic? Did you leave video games for a while for school and work, or was that always something you always found time to, or made time to do?
I always found time. It's like my hobby. In between work and like social life stuff.
Sure.
I always made time for games.
Good for you.
Yeah.
What do you think of what's going on with like eNASCAR and esports in general, with all the big money coming into it?
Yeah, now the podcast is going to get real now, because I have an opinion on that. So,
sure, go for it.
Before I started iRacing, I played a game called Rainbow Six Siege. This game came out very late 2015, so I'm going to say 2016 because it came out like December 2015. So basically 2016. It came out as a military sim. If you or anybody listening knows the Tom Clancy video games of yesteryear, so we're talking like the original Ghost Recon, Rainbow Six. These were hardcore military simulators on the computer.
Sure.
Before Squad, America's Army, and all those military games. Tom Clancy's games were very like methodical, and you could do a lot of tactical. So I was really into the tactical games, and I still am. I've always gravitated more towards tactical and strategy games. So going back to Rainbow Six, it came out, the online multiplayer at this time was unheard of, like unseen, because the biggest games are Call of Duty and Battlefield, so those are run and gun sort of first person shooters, and Rainbow Six was a very close quartered, slowed down, tactical, not really dependent on your gun skill. Didn't matter much if you had a good sort of like strategic mind, or you could play defense, and there was all these different things you could contribute to your team without being a gunner, like someone who's just good at like killing, good reflexes and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
So I got into that, and it was a good time in the beginning because the community was very niche. Because again, Call of Duty is you can just jump in and anyone can sort of learn it and play it. So this game kind of fended off a lot of the toxic people and fair weather people, because it was much harder. So we had this great community. I remember there was a good relationship between the developers, because the game came out as very small. Message boards and forums.
Message boards! Wow, that's a blast from the past. I said the message boards. That's a blast from the past. I remember those.
I know. Yeah. That's like how old. Yeah, there's a couple of words you don't hear anymore.
Yeah, that's
message boards.
That's like web TV.
Maybe not. Maybe it's more like Discord servers. I like message boards, but yeah. So the community was really tight, and the developers kind of were out there like, hey, like, well, what kind of like improvements or like what kind of things do you want to see, right? And it's like they would kind of listen, and the changes would kind of come in, and they also had their own direction. Now, long story short, like the game just got more popular. They really supported it, lots of content for it. The game grew. Now, you understand, if you're a company, your goal is to make money, right?
Exactly.
So they saw lots of players coming in, and they kind of started tailoring the game. I don't want to say like dumbing it down, but they kind of dumbed it down and made it. A lot of the updates became away from realistic military-based technology to like more futuristic, hypothetical stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Stupid skins for your gun and player, and all this just, half Fortnite, half military sim.
Right.
So it got really popular. Then they started the Pro League and the Rainbow Six Invitational. So these are esports events.
Got it.
It grew to that point. But put it in a nutshell, it got to the point where the pro player base made up less than 1% of the entire fan base or player base, right?
Sure. Yep.
But they were the loudest because they were in front of the cameras and on Twitch streams, and they had the viewers and the followers. So their voices was the loudest. But there was also, to be fair, on Reddit, there was like your like casual players that wanted things are too hard in the game, make it easier. I wanted the game to be more like arcadey. So there was always this kind of like battle between the pro scene and then the casual Rainbow Six player.
Sure.
To the point where they were suggesting like 2 builds of the game, like a build just for the esports and then a build for the rest of the people. Like it got ridiculous. Like
sure.
So in my opinion, when that happened, when the esports scene for that game grew, the game got worse, in my opinion, because now the developers were having to listen to 2 different bases. Like they had to appease the base player base, like your casual gamer, and then they had to appease the pro players, right?
Sure. Well, let me jump in and ask you something. When you saw this beginning to happen, where the floodgates opened, and you guys were there in its infancy, were you able to cocoon yourself into like your own little league, like you can do on iRacing? Was that a thing yet, or you had to put up with being pulled from both ends, the pro end and the newbies?
So there's no leagues or anything like that. Like
okay.
It's a 5-on-5, and you can squad up with 5 players.
Okay.
With yourself and 4 other players, and then you can go into the ranked queue and just you get what you get.
Got it. Okay.
So you can definitely. I was part of Discord servers. One was like Old Man Gamers or 40 plus. Like so, there were Rainbow Six groups on Discord where you had to meet a requirement to join. Like you had to be like someone were like, are you over 35? Are you like casual? Are you like serious? Like or you want to have fun? So like you get into those and you get like-minded people who are like for the strategy of the game, but it didn't work because that's just the way the game became. Like you can play the game as strategic as you want, but the way that they made the game was you're just always going to lose. So basically what happened was like if you're just a good gunner, good reflexes, good gun skills, that's like it didn't matter about the strategy anymore. Like using the utilities and like planning and like that. If you could just kill the enemies, that's all that mattered.
Got it. And
so, yeah,
go ahead. And you said you see something similar happening on iRacing. Explain the correlation there, and when do you think it happened?
I don't think it's there yet. I think mine, it's more of a fear because I think eSIM racing is in its infancy as well. And you see it now with that other game that's coming out, Rensport.
Yep.
That has their Twitch channel, ESLR1. Like they created an E channel, esports channel on Twitch just to stream the esports. I think it's kind of weird that the game's not even out yet. It has very few cars and tracks, and yet it's like a $500,000 tournament.
Wow. Talk about the cart before the horse.
The viewership, already though, like it came out hot. Like it's like, wow, let's see. I think there was like thousands of people watching the first broadcast, and like,
wow,
there was like 500 people. Like it really went down, right?
Yeah.
Here's the difference. So you can't watch Rainbow Six in real life, but you can watch racing in real life.
True.
So at what point is there burnout? So why am I gonna watch virtual 200 laps around Daytona when I can watch the actual Daytona, right?
That's true. I got to tell you, during when they were doing that on COVID, and I guess Fox had already paid the money for the the rights to broadcast. So they said we got to do something. So I remember I'm watching iRacing when it should have been I don't know, Daytona or Atlanta, and I'm like, listen to these and the announcers. It was so funny. I was like, they're being serious, but this is like a cartoon. And the funny thing was when they showed the drivers. I'm watching in one of the races. It was one of the first Coca-Cola championships or whatever it was, and I think first prize was only $30,000 at that time. And you're watching the guy's in-car camera, and there's his webcam, and he's in his bedroom at his house, and you could see the dog coming in and out of the room. And as he was in first place and the white flag came out, his parents and his brother and sister and the dog and all the neighbors started crowding around the bedroom door. And I'm like, I looked at it and go, hey, I said to my son, I says, that guy didn't make his bed. Look at this. His bed's a mess. His clothes are all over the floor. I was like, wow, it was so surreal just watching that happen then. But yeah, I haven't watched many of those since, but back then it was the only thing to watch. And we had already been iRacing at that point for 4 years. And we were just like, okay, we want to watch racing on TV. So that's what we did. And to be honest with you, I don't think I've watched one since. So yeah, why watch it on TV, a cartoon, when you can go watch the real thing or do the real thing downstairs on your sim?
I think but to me, it's more of just burnout. It's something you can't watch. Like I was saying, like you can't watch Call of Duty in real life. You can't watch League of Legends in real life. Like these are all fantastical games like that you watch because there is no real life equivalent. But racing, like there is a real life equivalent. Like because iRacing follows the schedule of NASCAR. Like if they're at Bristol, then the eNASCAR is at Bristol and so on, right?
Right.
But like you just watched a weekend of maybe you watched the whole weekend of you watched the Craftsman Trucks race, you watched the Xfinity race, you watched the Cup race, and then it's like, okay, now there's like eNASCAR, and it's like, no, I just spent the whole weekend watching real racing, like
right.
Why and the viewership I think reflects that. Like it's not like a ton of people watching. I think it's good, but I think the meat and potatoes of my point is I don't want to see it go down this rabbit hole where the professional players in iRacing start dictating, changes in the game. Like, hey, make the car this way, feel, do this and that.
Yep.
Because they only represent a small portion of the community.
Right.
And, I just don't want it to go in that way where you have like a butting of heads of like the majority of the community, versus like, and to give the credit where credit's due for professional players, and this also applies to Rainbow Six, they will show you the way that it's meant to be played. So like when I saw like a professional player on a certain character in Rainbow Six, they showed you the absolute maximum efficiency that character can be played at the highest level.
Gotcha.
Right. So when someone on iRacing, like a professional, like say Casey Kerwin, is in a cup car, he's showing you the absolute highest level that car can be driven at. Right.
True.
So in that respect, you can learn. You can learn by watching, but I don't think it's an attainable. I don't think it's something that the majority of people are going to attain.
Right. And just to jump in for a second here, you're talking about those other games. They're more, there's no reality where you can go play that in the street or watch it live, like you said. Actual I don't think the racing leagues, Indy, Formula One, or NASCAR, would let the professional drivers dictate to iRacing how they would drive. I don't see that. As well as there's a lot less people sim racing than there are playing Fortnite and other games like that. Correct?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think there's some built-in protections there because, like you said, it is something you can go out and do in real life. And I would assume if I don't know, Bass Pro Shops came out with a video game, the professional, and you're out there on your tracker boat, I don't think Tracker is going to let a professional sim fisherman dictate things the tracker can do that really doesn't happen in real life. That would be my guess.
Right, but it also it could also, like it all comes down to the dollar, right? The almighty dollar.
Exactly.
So, I have faith in iRacing to not compromise the game, but nothing surprises me to if let's say it did blow up,
right?
The esports scene, and what is the number one way to get more players playing a game? You make it accessible
and cheaper,
right?
Yep,
and cheaper. Accessibility is number one. People don't iRace and play Gran Turismo because Gran Turismo is much more easier to pick up and play than iRacing. Of course, there are other factors, but in general, you can also say Forza or whatever, but iRacing is a very brutal experience
yes,
for someone.
It is.
There's no forgiveness.
No. That's like I said, when I finished and I qualified, it was 2 heat races. I qualified, missed the first one, and I qualified 16th for the main feature Sunday night. And I knew that. I told my teammates, I said, look, welcome to my team. I'll send you some coffee mugs and home roasted coffee, but I said, don't come looking to me for advice on how to race. I asked you on the team to teach me. And then when I started 16th, I'm like, here we go. And then when I ended up finishing 8th, it was 2 laps to go, and some guy ran me into the inside wall at North Wilkesboro, which is a hard enough track to drive to begin with. And I had to go in. I got the meatball flag for required repairs, and it's the required repairs are only 26 seconds, so I figured it was something nice and easy. I get back out on the track, and my wheel is at a 90-degree right angle. So when I'm going through the turns, that little red stripe on the top of the wheel, that's straight up in the air like you're going in. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to lose this 8th place finish. I'm going to limp around the track. I'm going to stay out of the way of the leaders because it's a short track and I'm probably going to get lapped. And darn it, I made it. And as soon as I crossed the finish line, I went right back into the wall again. And I'm like, 8th place, yes! I was so happy.
It's like, many stories of I'm just yesterday I was doing my USF 2000 race, and I qualified pole position.
Good for you.
And it's at Road America. Yeah. And I'm in pole position the whole race. It starts off, there's a huge hubbub behind me, big accident. So I look in my rear view and I'm like, sweet, not sweet, but personally to myself, I'm like, sweet. I got I have some buffer. Yep. I'm not someone's not right behind me. So okay, and I get a nice 4 or 5 second gap, and I'm doing my thing. It's a 7-lap race, so I'm on. Now these people that were involved in that accident all went in, got their repairs and everything, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going on my last lap, and I'm coming on lapped cars, and not it's not intentional, but this person, God bless them, they tried to get out of the way. They tried to do the right thing, but they hit something, and then they sent me flying. And I went from first place the entire race, 10th or something.
Oh no!
That's the brutality of iRacing, where the same contact in Gran Turismo is not going to do anything to your car. If maybe a little bit, but not much. Yep. Whereas in iRacing, some cars are much more resilient. Mm-hmm. Like these are the USF 2000 is an open wheeler. Like if you breathe on it, it's going to explode. Like in iRacing, you know.
And especially on a road course, and if you got to be towed back in, you got to wait like what? Sometimes I know at Watkins Glen, your tow truck will be here tomorrow afternoon. It seems. Meanwhile,
like a 3-minute tow, and it was one fast repair, which is good. But by that time, it's like okay, I already fallen, to 10th place or whatever, right? Yeah. And it comes back to my point. So if you ever go like on the forums of like iRacing or anything, you see people come in there and say like, well, it shouldn't be like that. Like damage shouldn't be like that. And other people want more damage. Other people want this and that. So there already is like a lot of voices in iRacing, right? Mm-hmm. Now, maybe I have a controversial opinion, but now you know the term netcode and prediction code, right?
I know netcode. I'm not sure what prediction code is, but I know netcode causes some fake crashes to happen or crashes that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, so prediction code is what happens when, like, if there's an accident and it happens really fast.
Yep.
And I'm not sure if you've ever got, like, if it's happened right in front of you, but you kind of just, like, went through the car as if it was not there.
Yes, yep.
And then, like, you get a 4X and you might get some damage. So it's like prediction code. Like, it's basically iRacing, like, predicting what damage you're getting, even though it's not reflected. Netcode is what you said, bad, sort of like latency, like, like, you drive past somebody, you're like 6 feet away from them, but it registers as contact, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so here's my opinion. Now, imagine, I guess if this was something in Rainbow Six or Counter-Strike where if you shot 6 feet to the left of somebody's head and that registers as a headshot, absolutely nobody would play. Like, the community would be ballistic. There'd be no esports scene for that game. So it doesn't exist in shooters, or it exists, but to a minuscule level. So, in my opinion, because it exists in iRacing, and it has for a very long time before I played, probably before you played, since probably the beginning, I think damage should be less than what it is to compensate.
Makes sense.
For netcode and prediction code. Now, I say this in like a forum, and then you get absolutely blasted.
Well, of course,
not realistic, right?
No, it's too realistic.
Right, and that's they're like, no, it's not realistic what you're proposing, and I'm like, well, it's also not realistic to drive past somebody 10 feet away from them, and then your car goes flying. Right, that's not realistic, right?
So the draft works.
It's an online game with people from all over the world connecting to it. There has to be a sacrifice if iRacing cannot, I don't want to say fix, but if they cannot optimize netcode and prediction code, then there needs to be, in my opinion, a compromise.
I can't argue with that. What do you think the role of AI is going to be in iRacing going forward?
AI?
Artificial intelligence.
So like AI erasing or
correcting netcode and such like that.
Oh, I see.
Or
I think again, it's one of those things about budget and how much money does iRacing have, right?
Right.
iRacing isn't bankrolled like R-Factor 2 Motorsport Games by Motorsports Network, bankrolling a terrible game that buys licenses. I don't want to go. Well, maybe I do want to go down that hole, but that buys up. The EA Sports of sim racing, motorsports games. Just buy up exclusive licenses. Don't allow other games to have it, and proceed to release absolute crap for video games.
And
So
that thing with them in Indy, that's not going to last long. Even if didn't they come out and say that they were burning out of cash and only had like less than $1 million in cash left or something, and they didn't think they were going to make it till Christmas?
they got like a sum of money somewhere. Somebody
Okay.
just got like another check from like Motorsports Network, and they have bottomless pockets, right?
Yep.
Somebody is just always bailing them out. But again, is it Motorsports Games' fault that Indy is stupid, or that NASCAR or whoever else they have, BTCC, maybe they're stupid to give the licenses to that? And like I said in the beginning of the podcast, it's all about money.
It is. Right? Yeah, well, they have to survive somehow. And if you're owned by
racing had more money,
yeah,
and they could have the licenses. Like if somebody was bankrolling iRacing, like say somebody came in and it was like, I want to like inject $50 million into iRacing, and with that, I want you to get all the licenses you can get. Open up a brand new R&D division. Just make iRacing the best sim, and here's a huge blank check, right? But they don't have that. Like iRacing gets their money, from their subscriptions and stuff like that. Whereas like Motorsport Games has, a TV network basically backing them, right?
Right. And iRacing seems to be more like open source, where they don't mind if you use logos and such like that on your leagues or on your Twitch channel or something like that. They seem to be pretty open about it. And also,
it's just they just don't have the money, I guess, to compete, to get to keep the licenses. Like that was such a big. The Indy one, I think, really pissed off a lot of people.
Oh, it pissed off a lot of people.
That was a big one. And to me, like, that's been in gaming for so long, to see the early 2000s come back, where Need for Speed had the licenses for, like, Porsche, and Borzik didn't have this, and Need for Speed didn't have this. And then it got better, where car companies allowed their cars in all the games. And now it's reverting back to the exclusive. You know what, R Factor 2? You can go and buy every single license, and nobody's going to play your game because the game sucks.
Yeah, I pretty much stick with iRacing. I don't have time, nor do I want to learn any other racing game. I have so much fun doing iRacing. Learn so much. I've run a couple leagues. I do the podcast now. And it's just so much fun. And I think one thing that's going to protect iRacing from all that is they will never, like you said, no one's going to come in and dump $100 million into it, because it's a niche sport, where Grand Theft Auto, anybody wants to drive a car really fast can go drive a car really fast and then do it, because down a street or whatever. I've never played that game, but it's like you said, it's fantasy land. So I think that there's not going to be 10 million people playing iRacing, so that's going to be picked up by some venture capitalist that's going to come in and then pay too much money for it and fire everybody, and then end up selling it to some publicly traded company, because basically no one's going to want it, because it's a double-edged sword. We're somewhat isolated, so we're not going to get the venture capital money coming in like you do for, let's say, a new iPhone. That's, if a new phone's going to come out and knock iPhone out, everybody's going to try to jump in on that. So it's a double-edged sword. We're in this little private play space, and it's going to be as good as it is, but there's not going to be a lot of money coming in, so it won't get spoiled, but it won't get, the best it could be either. So, it's kind of
why, I really like iRacing, because it's still, even with the pandemic, people that joined, it got to its most popular level. With the big inclusion of the pandemic people. Now, is there still toxicity? Absolutely. Like,
of course.
I think, I didn't play iRacing pre-pandemic. I got there as the pandemic was underway, but I will venture to guess that iRacing was probably better community-wise before the pandemic.
Yes, except on Saturday mornings when or around Christmas time. Saturday mornings when the kids were off from school and you're trying to race and all the kids are racing. And, they got to race too. You know what you're getting into. Sure. And then from Christmas Day until a couple months after that, when, the kids get their new computer and someone buys them an iRacing subscription, then the open forums, you've got to watch out. I mean, I love it. I know when I'm doing pickup truck cup or carburetor cup, even on a 10-lap race at Phoenix or whatever, 25 laps at Phoenix, I know no matter where I qualify, I'm going to get wrecked, but I'm kind of waiting for it, because my challenge doing that is, all right, get me wrecked, get me in there, get me repaired, and then I'm going to come out and fight like hell and see how far I can get back to the top. So it's kind of like a free-for-all. And I do finish in the top 10 quite frequently there. Now, official races, my average finish is probably 10 to 15, and in the leagues, if there's 20 cars, I'm going to finish 12. So I'm really happy with the top 10, but I can't remember the last time I ran an official race. I did it not too long ago just to get my my I rating back up. The highest I ever got was 1490 in an A license, and I said, I want to get 1500. And every time I got close to 1500, I would get knocked back down to 1,000. I sunk as low as 800. I says, right now I'm 1,001. But I don't do the official races, or very seldom the open forums like that, like Carburetor Cup, etc., because I'm so busy racing in the leagues, and we just have so much fun there. And I race usually 2 different leagues. This time last year, I was actually running 3 different leagues, doing broadcasting 2 of them, doing the podcast for the league, and then doing the podcast like this. And I could do it because I was semi-retired, and then I'm looking at myself, I'm spending 40 hours a week just managing the leagues and only racing an hour. I said, is that what I want to do? So
yeah, of course, you want to get in there and race, and I'm pretty much 99% official racing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a tough thing, like the I rate. So one of my other opinions is about I rating, right?
Yep.
It's the only game I've ever played competitively online that tells you what your skill level is, or your matchmaking number, right?
Ah, okay. Interesting.
In Rainbow Six, you were like gold 3 or like silver 4. Like, you didn't know the actual number.
Right. You just
of what you were, right?
You didn't know how good of a silver or a gold you were. Here you do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a bad thing. I don't think iRating should be shown to the players. Now, you'll hear iRacing developers and everyone just tell you it's just a matchmaking number. Okay? You know what? People do not treat it as a matchmaking number.
Oh, no, they don't. No.
To the majority of people, it's a show of skill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
It's really not, to be fair. To be honest, it's not really. But when you have iRating and you can see it, and you can see how much you're going to gain or lose in a race, I think it affects the way people race in the race.
I could see that. Yep. Yep. I could definitely see that point.
I just wouldn't I wouldn't let it be known. Like, if it's such a number that doesn't really matter aside from matchmaking, then why do they show it, right? Like, if you're good, you're good, right? You're just gonna race good, right?
Well, maybe let me jump in there. Maybe that comes from because racing is reality, and let's go into the broadcaster of the football game or the basketball video games or baseball. You get up to bat, you know what your average is, you know what your on-base percentage is, you know the pitcher's ERA, so maybe it's a little bit different because this is reality. I mean, there's no I rating in NASCAR, but the better drivers who they are because they got the better sponsors and the better equipment. So maybe there's a correlation there because it is related to real life.
Right. If they want to be really realistic, then you would take away numbering cars in a race based on iRating, and you would just let everybody on the service choose their own number.
I get where you're coming from. Yep.
You choose up to like 5 or 10 custom numbers, and you get assigned one of your preferred numbers when you get into a race.
Yep.
It's not based on iRating.
No, I got where you're coming from there. That makes sense. Right? Yep, that makes sense.
And then you standardize the dishing out of iRating because so first place in F1 is the same points all the time. Right? It doesn't matter if Max Verstappen wins,
right,
or if the Haas driver wins. It doesn't mean the Haas driver gets more points because they're not as highly rated as Verstappen. You get the same points, right? So if you really want to be realistic and standardize the points that everybody gets.
Oh, I can see that point. I know the one thing I hate because my road iRating is like, I think it's like 600 something. I love road courses, but I totally suck at them. And when I do an official, and then I'm hoping, I'm like, okay, there's 16 cars. I hope I'm if there's number 16, if there's 16 cars, I want to be number 30 because I could crash and I'm still going to gain iRating. But so many times I get in the race and I'm like number 2 and I'm like, oh, this sucks.
That's why, I mean, there's things that can be done. Like, like I said, the custom numbers thing.
Yep.
Just get rid of it. Like, don't assign car numbers based on iRating. Just get rid of that.
Right, because when you get in the race, you don't know if you're in the bottom bracket there or whatever they call it. You don't know if you're the best of the worst or the worst of the worst.
Right, and how many times have I been wrecked by the number 1 car?
Oh, I get wrecked by number 1 all the time.
Right, like the number 1 car always the big eagle. So what was it? Just for an example. Okay, yes, it was a USF race Formula V. I race a lot of the Formula V, so
I love Formula V.
Oh, I love the Formula V. Like, it's one of my favorites. I still race it. So I was like, there was 12 total racers, and I was like number 7. And the number 1 car went on the mic and said, "Hey, first time trying this, whatever, right? Like, okay, no problem. Now, I'm going to be faster just because based on the fact that I've raced the car a lot. Like, I just know the car.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
So I was ahead of this person, and then they have that number 1 car attitude. Like, they just punted me. Like, hey, no way, like a number 6, 7 rated car. I have 500 more iRating.
Yeah.
I have to be first place. Like, it's not true. Like,
no, it's not.
People that, it's just not true.
It's like with a horse race. How many times does the favorite actually win the race?
Exactly. Like,
yep.
You're not like so you can get a large iRating if you just stayed, let's say, in the Mazdas, Formula V. Like, just say that's all you race, and you got to like 2,000, 3,000 iRating, and then you decided one day, I'm going to buy Lotus 49 or whatever, just for an example, right?
Yep.
A very notoriously maybe the hardest car to drive on iRacing. So you buy it and you go into a race with your 3,000 iRating and your number 1 car. You've never driven the car, and the person who's like, the number 10 car and has maybe 1,500 iRating, that's all they race, is going to be faster than you.
Right.
And you're not going to take it because you're like, no, I have 2,000 iRating. I must be faster.
Yeah. I see that this toxicity that you talked about, it's all, trust me, it's not just on the racing forums and iRacing groups on Facebook. It's in the garden groups too. And when Facebook, I guess it was right around the time of COVID or just before that, Facebook really started advertising their groups. And us in the garden business, we already had a page or a group for professionals. There's like 4,000 of us across Canada, United States, and to be in it, you got to be a horticulturist. You got to work at a garden center, own one, or be a manager. And I was one of the first 200 in this group. I was the lawn and garden buyer for I think the 10th largest independent garden center company in the United States. We had 4 stores, and just the lawn and garden end of our business was like $28 million, and I was in charge of all of it. And we were all like, oh, these garden groups are going to be great. We can share our knowledge. Here's how we're going to beat Walmart and Home Depot and Lowe's. Boy, did we have a rude awakening, because in the garden groups, there's this group of people that we call the Epsom Salts Mafia. Epsom salts fixes anything. According to these people, Epsom salts is a fertilizer. It's an insecticide, a fungicide, an herbicide, and as well as something to soak your feet in. And it stops all these diseases, makes your plants grow. And when you come on there and you start, gently correcting these people, you literally get attacked by the Epsom salts mafia. Well, who the heck do you think you are? I Googled this. I'm a master gardener. Well, master gardeners, that's part of our land grant college system across the country, and it's part of cooperative extension, which is like a farm and home to help farmers and homeowners in the countryside, can their goods and sow their stuff like that. Okay. Kind of like treating people like Amish people. And for a long time, they were really, really good. But then these people called master gardeners, first of all, the title went right to their head. And they took maybe 40 hours of classes to get the title Master Gardener. And these people are all over the internet, and they're saying, well, Google this, Google that. And I said, I'm sorry, but my 4-year degree and 35 years in the business kind of supersedes your Master Gardener title and your Google search. No, it doesn't. I'm like, okay. So it's everywhere. And I talked to
it's everywhere. I joined a bunch of sim racing groups on Facebook and stuff, and the majority is very positive. People helping. I'm going to say that. Yeah. I'll be honest, it is right, but I see grown ass men going into these groups and naming the person that wrecked them, finding them on Facebook, and I'm like, you are a 50-year-old man. Grow up.
Exactly.
Right? You're not a child, okay?
Yep.
And I comment on that. I call these people out.
Yeah.
And I say, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life that you're coming onto Facebook because somebody wrecked you, intentional or not? File a protest if it's intentional.
Yeah.
Let iRacing deal with it. But come out here and make it personal, on Facebook, and find them if they have a Facebook page and then call them all. This is you're not 12 years old, okay?
Right.
It's a game.
Yep.
It's a sim. It's a game. Just play it. Everyone gets wrecked, intentional and unintentionally. It happens to everybody. It has happened, right? It's gonna happen. Of course, I get mad. The race that I told you, the USF. Of course, I was on the last lap. I was mad after, what I did is I closed the game down and I went and read a book or
or had a beer,
played with my dog or something, right?
Yeah. Oh, you do, because it's like these other games. You can just jump on a lot of these other video games and play, and okay. And then you lose and you go away. It's like playing a pinball machine. You have a shitty pinball game and you go away. But to participate in iRacing, you got to get on, hopefully for the practice. Then you got to qualify. Then you drive the 2 pre-qualifying laps or pre-green flag laps. And there's an effort to play iRacing. You just can't hop on unless you're going to practice and say, okay, well, I had a bad time. So, it's usually... You get on, you practice, you qualify, you wait for the start. You're 15, 20 minutes into this effort, and then you get wrecked on lap 1. Yeah, you're going to be pissed. But then it's what you do with it afterwards. Absolutely. Yeah. And it drives you crazy.
So the question is, what can we do, or what can be done to minimize that? Now, like I said, some of the things are like the hiding of the I rating. Um, don't make that a thing. Like, don't like, because like when I got wrecked in that scenario,
Right.
I went from having it was like plus 85 I rating to like negative 100. It's just boom, I lost 100 I rating,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
So that kind of like compounds until
Yes.
you're already pissed off that you got wrecked, right?
Yep.
So hide the I rating, give people the ability to have their own number. What else can there are like anti-toxicity now. It's something that
Instead,
I posed on the iRacing forum is a kudos or praise system in iRacing where we have the protest system, which in my opinion is not always used correctly. I think people do abuse the protest system for something that's not actually protestable, but they just want to complain about another driver.
Sure.
So why not have the opposite, where we have a kudos button? So if you come into contact with another good racer, like they stayed off the track, they were helpful, they said something positive, you can send them after the game. You can like give them like a kudos, and it's a reputation system. So it's something that you can build.
There you go.
And
okay.
Further,
Yep.
iRacing can take this into account in the matchmaking and put people with high reputation
right
into the same brackets, right?
Yeah, it's like on Twitch. If somebody likes you, they can send you an attaboy or something like that, or a good job. So it's like a little badge.
It's something I proposed. Now, of course, there's somebody's got to say something negative on the forums, right? And they're like, no, that's stupid because then people can just farm it. I'm like, nope, because you can limit the farming. You can say you can only send a praise to this person once every X amount of time, or this person you can only receive this amount of reputation in a day. So there are things you can do to not make it farming. But my question is, what's bad about farming a positive reputation?
Nothing.
You want to have a good reputation, right?
Well, I mean, that could be very self-limiting because you can only do it, you've got, I don't know, 30 minutes after the race where you raced that person to make a positive comment about them, or 24 hours or something. And you can only do it once after you've raced them, or like that. I mean, if you race them 3 times in a day, yeah, you can do it 3 times in a day. Or maybe once a day. But yeah, I see where you're going. Yeah. But you
can put in place to not make it spammy. But why don't we want to spam positivity reputation?
Well, then it loses its value. It's like any it's like when you could go on to Twitter or Instagram and you could buy 100,000 followers, fake accounts, of course, for $20.
Sure, yeah. So, I don't know how you could buy positivity reputation, but if you limited the amount that a person going to get per day, like protections. But
no, that makes...
my question to you would be, here's a question for you, right?
Sure.
Let's say you are signing up for an official race, right?
Yep.
Would you rather be put into a split with highly safe drivers with a high positive reputation, or would you rather be put into a bracket of just high I-rated people with a very low safety rating?
It depends on how my day is going. If I'm having a good day, I want to race with good guys. If I'm really mad, I might, then that's the case. I might want to be a bad driver racing with good drivers and wreck them and take it out on them. But no, I see where you're going. But yeah, I would rather race with like-minded drivers. And
so I played a game once, and I can't remember what the name. It was a first-person shooter, I believe. It had a reputation system, and it was taken into account in matchmaking, where like like there are things like location. Location was always like number one, and then of course skill at the game. But reputation was included in the matchmaking, so you would generally find yourself in servers with other highly reputable people, and the matches were like always awesome because they were like really good people, clean, and fun, right? So like I want to be in a race with clean drivers, right? Like a clean race, right?
Yep. No, that makes sense. What I would encourage you to do, if you haven't checked out any of the iRacing leagues, do that, because if a league is, where the admins and the owners of the league are letting all their friends win, they don't last long. And if it's full of bad drivers, they don't last long. That's why
I don't know about leagues, Greg.
What's that?
Let me tell you something about leagues. I've been in a couple leagues, and they're fine, but it's a caution fest. It's eye pacing.
It depends on the
my
league
experience. Like,
and a lot of them are
leagues were like
A lot of them are. We had there were a bunch of guys in the league I ran that we tossed out, and I'm not going to name their league, but their broadcaster actually dropped them because they were averaging 15 to 20 cautions a race. Stuff like that. But ours are pretty clean. I mean, there's sometimes we'll have 7 or 8 cautions in a race because it's a tough track, like Martinsville, and Martinsville's hard to race on anyway. Talladega, for whatever reason, is just a bull crap track. We don't tolerate bad drivers. Bad drivers get thrown out. We tell everybody when you come in, we don't care how many races you win, what your I rating is. If you want to have fun, this is it. Be competitive as you want, but we don't take any bullcrap drivers. So that's up to the league owners to police. And there's a lot of bad leagues out there. I've been in some, but there's
a case of this wasn't even a case of bad drivers. It's just leagues are two things. One, whatever happens in a league race does not count towards your safety rating or I rating. So that's number one.
Yep.
Number two is it does attract, from at least what I saw in the 2 or 3 leagues that I were, lower I-rated people because they're looking for clean racing. They're lower rating.
Yep.
So the majority, the accidents were 100% just on skill, like lack of skill.
Yeah.
Which is fair. Like, if you're not great at a game, I'm not going to question. I'm not going to say anything. Like that's just life, man. But I'm just saying personally for me, the races, it was only like 150 laps at like, Talladega.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like I don't have my time with like my job and other stuff. Like maybe I have like an hour and a half a day, maybe 2 to do so. So I have to weigh it like on the scales of justice, right? Like, how do I want to spend my time?
I totally understand.
Racing, right?
Yep, got it.
So for me, league racing isn't the thing, but I see its value, and I think if you find a good league, it can be better than just racing official races.
Oh, it is. I mean,
if you find that hot iron.
Yeah, to me, it is. And it's because it's. I've been racing with these same guys. I mean, I turned the league over to somebody else last year because it just got to be too much. There was some internal turmoil, which I've been told that usually by season 3 or 4, if you make it that far, you're golden. But a lot of them start failing at season 3 because of internal turmoil and stuff, and that's what happened. So I stepped aside, did some stupid stuff. And, took my football and went home instead of asking for help. So these guys picked it up. I ended up leaving the league for a while, and then they invited me back in, and now I'm doing their podcast, and I'm back in as an admin, and which is great because I don't own the league anymore. I don't have to pay the bills because last year I was between prize money and broadcasting. I think I was putting out $350 to $400 a month in fees like that because I enjoyed it. It was like running. I felt like I had my own little racing kingdom or something, and we had had admins for each league, and each league had its own managers, and they kind of, just said, hey, here's the basic rules. You guys run it. I'll meet with you in the admin meeting. So I'm, back doing that. But yeah, for me, it was a godsend because I've known these guys for 2 or 3 years now. We've become pretty good friends. Mm-hmm. We, on occasion, will run into each other somewhere. But one of the coolest things was the admin meetings with this league because there was one guy up in Maine. I'm here in New York. There was another guy in Texas and another guy over in Ireland. And my wife comes home and goes, who are you talking to? I go, well, this guy in Texas, this guy in Maine, and the guy over there in Ireland. She goes, you're on your iPhone? I go, yeah, we're having a meeting about the league. And it was so cool.
And I think the hosted and league functionality of iRacing is something that sets it apart from every other racing game. Is in my opinion, iRacing is untouchable when it comes to online racing. It's the premier sim racing online game.
I think so.
No one's going to catch it. I don't care what anybody says. Assetto Corsa, R Factor, it's just Automobilista. I don't care about those fanboys. It's not going to catch iRacing. It has too much of a history, been around too long.
Yeah.
It's ingrained in NASCAR and all these other things for it to be touched. A Rennsport is not going to have a chance against iRacing. I don't care. So it's just, they're so smart in the way that they built iRacing. Like
I think so too.
Sign up for races, the hosted races, the leagues, the painting, and just it's an ecosystem that it cannot be duplicated by any other company. It just won't be, right? So that's a good and a bad thing because what happened when EA Sports bought the official license for Madden? Oh, creativity went down the tube. Mm-hmm. They had no competition, so they didn't have to do anything.
Right.
And all the EA Sport games suck, right?
Yes, pretty much. I've never played them. I think I had one.
Maybe iRacing needs competition. Competition breeds innovation.
Yes, it does.
So if somebody has to keep iRacing on their toes, iRacing then will have to maybe step up their game even more, right?
Yep.
So competition is a good thing. It's a very good thing. I just don't see all these other games are just too many years away from being any kind of competition to iRacing.
Yeah, and as far like I said, I am so ingrained into it, and I am not technically savvy. Like if somebody said, "Here, can you set up my iRacing stuff?" I go, "Well, look." I said, "I'm going to treat this like I do if I were giving you tax advice. I know enough to get you in. So what's going to end up happening is I know enough to get you in trouble and me arrested. So I don't want to tell you how to." So that's my thing when it comes to technology. I'm like, okay, I finally figured out how to stream my races on Twitch. I finally figured it out. It took me a long time because, like I said, I'm not technically savvy, and I don't necessarily want to be. I know trees and shrubs and stocks and bonds. I don't know a bit from a byte and a server from a toaster when it comes, and I don't want to when it comes to that because I can always find someone that can fix it for me. It's just like when people call me up and they say, "Hey, I want you to mow my lawn. What's it cost?" $75. Okay, I don't care. I want you to do it. I don't want to touch my lawn. Yeah. I don't want to touch my trees. I want you to plant my tomatoes. And when I come up on the weekend, I want a basket of tomatoes, cucumbers, and hot peppers washed and ready for dinner. I'm like, yeah, okay. And you're going to pay me $60 US an hour to do that. And they don't care because when they bring their friend, and there's some people where I live. It's in a It's a private lake community. The rich people live on the lake. Those of us that live off the lake mow their lawns and pick their tomatoes. And there are people who will pay you good money because when they come up with their friends, the friends want to see the garden, but these people don't want to work in it. And like I said, you basically have a little basket of vegetables when they come up on Friday night, and it's all ready to go. And they're showing off their garden to their friends. And hey, I'm not proud. I'll take your money.
Yeah.
When it comes to that.
That's in the end, like, there's just too much. iRacing has, like, it's the only place you're going to get oval racing. No other sim has a competitive oval racing, so people are too ingrained in iRacing.
Yeah.
For them for actual competition now. Does iRacing have issues? Of course it does.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah,
like every game does, right?
Yep.
Like force feedback is not very good.
Has force
to like a lot of the other games?
Has force feedback, the quality of that, dropped off in iRacing? Because I feel like it has. Well, I feel like when I first started, even with my little, I still run a cheapo Logitech wheel. I upgraded to really nice pedals, but I just love my wheel, and I kind of feel that 3 or 4 years ago, or whatever the time was, that force feedback was actually better than it is now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, iRacing is on an ancient platform. They've done their best to squeeze what they can out of it. Graphically, it's not the prettiest. I like the graphics. Like, I'm not going to say I like them, but it's far from the prettiest.
Yeah, but it works.
Sim racing, like I said, of course, the Competizione looks better.
Yeah.
I don't know, Belisa 2 looks better. I don't really care. I'm not a graphics, it looks fine, but it's aging. The force feedback is aging. Of course, anyway, like I'm not going to get into the issues of it, but it has its issues. But at the end of the day, I still think it's the premier go-to sim racing game, and I think it will be for a long time.
I think so too.
I hope that companies come to their senses and just give the licenses to iRacing. Maybe they take a bit less money, but the trade-off is there's more notoriety with iRacing than there is with other companies.
Yeah, I think so, and like I said earlier, we're kind of it's a good and bad thing. It's like it's like the tug of war. It's a smaller community because, like I said, there's a lot more people playing Fortnite and these other games than there are playing iRacing. So it's not going to attract the money. But if it attracted the money, that's because there would be a lot of people in it, and then you would lose some of the fun, I think, when the big money comes in.
And that's where, like, I compared it to, like, Rainbow Six Siege, right? Because that's how it started. And it went the wrong way for me, but it went the right way for the Ubisoft because they hit a gold mine.
Sure.
That game, right? But, I know there's good people out in the gaming developing world. It's not always about the money.
Right.
That are passionate about their fans, and I know iRacing is compromised and motorsport fans. So I first and foremost, like the owners or whatever, are motorsport people, right?
Yes. Yep.
They're not EA Sports. Like EA Sports started, EA Electronic Arts started as the people who loved video games, and then now it's like a big conglomerate, company that doesn't care about anybody and only cares about their bottom line.
Right, and their original CEO was the founder of the company who loved motorsports, and now it's a guy that used to be manufacturing washing machines, and he's been a CEO of all kinds of companies and doesn't care about the race. He cares about the bottom line. So yeah, that's what happens in business all the time.
Yeah, and as long as they have that core staff and people involved, always going to stay true to their original vision of the game.
Yep.
Right?
I agree.
So at the end of the day, it's I play other if I want to if I don't want to play against other people and I'm just like hot lapping, I'll turn on like a set of Corsair, run some laps or like R Factor 2, just run some laps.
Sure.
Just to like not be bothered with online. But yeah, like for online racing, it's the go-to, and I think it's the best. And I think they do continue to improve it. Like they update the game frequently, and if you go on iRacing forums, they do take a lot of suggestions from the people on the forums. I've seen people post things in the forums that have been included in the game as an update, like a quality of life or something. So they listen to the to the player base.
That's pretty good. What do you think of the rain? Rain in the race. I was involved in a Watkins Glen race running the Mazdas about a year and a half ago, and I know it was a beta test because all of a sudden my windshield started getting wet and there was rain coming down, so I think they were testing it then, and I think it was pretty cool.
Yeah, people want something until they have it, and then they don't want it anymore.
Yep.
Because rain's going to come in, and then there's going to be a lot more wrecks, and then people will be like, rain sucks, take it out of the game.
Well, at least when it gets that way, and you're running a league, you can join a league that only races in the rain, and another one that doesn't do it at all.
Here's the other thing. As far as I know, NASCAR doesn't race in the rain, right?
Road courses they do. Ovals they don't.
But not on ovals, right?
Not on ovals.
So realistically, they would keep that in iRacing the right rule. So they would not implement rain in the ovals because that's not realistic, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
On road courses, they would, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Formula One races on every other road series races in rain, so that's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
It has to implement it correctly, and it has to not kill your graphics performance.
Exactly.
Or the performance of the game, right?
Because something like that is going to use up a ton of whatever in your computer, memory for graphics. I can imagine because it's all over the screen and it's. Whatever it does on your thing that uses up memory, I'm sure that rain would use up a lot of it.
Yeah, unless they optimize it. And one of the good things that I see in iRacing doing with this is rain has been talked about for a long time, so I know that they are not going to release it until it's up to their level of quality. So I think a lot of other companies will release features are broken, and then fixed later, buy now, pay later. Whereas iRacing is testing.
Right.
They don't want to release it until it's near perfect, right?
Yep. It seems to be that way, but even so, they've got to do patches for all their updates. It seems like every other software developer does.
Yeah. So, I'm excited for it. I like it. I like a little bit of rain. In the racing, because maybe, rain might be the great equalizer between high I-rated drivers and, actually not that. What it does is it introduces a variable into the game. So what I mean is iRacing, not just iRacing, but every other racing game, it all comes down to one thing, hot lapping, who's fast. So I'll give you an example, Watkins Glen. Let's just say Watkins Glen's in the Mazdas, right?
Yep.
If you can do a lap in, say, a minute and a half, right? Let's just say, let's say I can do a lap in 1 minute and 25 seconds. So I'm 5 seconds faster than you, right?
Right.
I'm pretty much always going to win. Because that's just the way the sim racing and the racing, that's how you win races in iRacing.
Yep.
If you are faster than somebody, that means you're going to qualify better.
Yep.
And you're going to avoid being behind people and avoid wrecks. It's like a domino effect. Now, if you introduce a variable like rain, it kind of levels the playing field because
to an extent, yeah.
Then all of a sudden, maybe you don't take into account this corner in the rain. And if the rain is dynamic, so all of a sudden, first place isn't guaranteed to whoever is the fastest.
Sure.
Because they slipped, they lost control, they didn't recover. So rain can be a great equalizer. I get frustrated too because when I go into a Formula V race, I'm still not the fastest at it. I'm still maybe one second off of the fastest Formula V times, right?
Yep.
And I will always lose that person. It just because they'll qualify first, I'll qualify second or third. And as long as they can run their laps with no interference, and I run my laps with no interference, they're always just going to be 1 second faster,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Well, there's literally nothing you can do to catch up. Now, if you introduce weather and effects and stuff, that equalizes or levels the playing field. So all of a sudden, maybe it rained, and where they are on the track, rain has accumulated more, and it slowed them down, and it allowed me to kind of catch up. So
sure.
Like in Automobilista 2 has dynamic weather. Not just, it has everything. Dynamic weather, dynamic track, and all this. So
that's cool.
It absolutely affects, it's not just the fastest person. Like I've seen the fastest person go from first to fifth just because they ran into a wet patch or something happened, right?
Yep.
Because
right now all you have is they make a mistake, or they get caught in lap traffic, or a slower car won't get out of the way, or somebody takes them out by accident.
That's the only scenario.
Pretty much.
But like I said, like if you and I ran our laps uninterfered, I'll always win because I'm 1 second faster than you.
Right, and after 10 laps, you're going to be 10 seconds ahead of me. Yeah, that's what happens.
And let's just say on that, 56th lap where I'm like 5 seconds ahead of you, I run into like a huge rain puddle, or I don't judge a corner well because of the rain, and now you catch up.
Right.
Whereas like that wouldn't happen with dry weather.
No.
Because you become robotic.
Yeah.
In the way that we do laps, because there's no dynamic track in racing, so that's another thing. Maybe you have to implement dynamic track. So as the race goes on, the rubber and this and that, like maybe you should make more of a. I would just like to see. Bottom line is, like, I would like to see more variables than just who's the fastest determining who's going to win the race. Like, it's not real life. It's not always like that. Like,
no, it's not.
It's not. Like, too many things can happen. Like, look at oval racing. Like, Harvick doesn't win every race. Logano doesn't win every race.
Right.
Nobody wins every race. Things happen. Like, the best driver gets taken out, gets wrecked, this, that. There's just too many variables. Like,
true.
In real racing, that Verstappen only wins because they have the fastest car. It's a pay to win in F1. F1 is a joke. Whoever has the most money wins. So I don't care about that. Like, you put Max Verstappen in the Haas car, or like the Williams, the Alpine, and you take somebody and put them in the Red Bull, yeah, he ain't winning that many races.
I was watching F1 a couple of years ago because my son started getting into it, and it's just such a different atmosphere. I mean, the amount of money and the people in the pit boxes are just like, there's dozens of them. And NASCAR says you can have 4 guys over the wall, or whatever the number is, and these guys, it's a total different world.
It's fun to watch, but F1 it's a joke sport to me because it's pay to win.
I could see that.
I hate that. I don't like pay to win. It's like soccer, right? Whoever has the most money can buy the best players. So
yeah, it's the same.
The best car.
That's the same in basketball and baseball.
The slowest F1 car, and put somebody else in the Red Bull car, and he's not winning as many races as he's going to win.
Well, I know that the New York Mets have been spending a lot of money, and guess what? They choked last year, and they're only a 500 team this year, and their owner went out and spent millions and millions of dollars. So sometimes that doesn't work. But
I think you're right about that. But I think it makes it's more significant in motorsport racing.
Yes,
it's like, hey, if I put you in a vehicle that is like this many seconds faster versus my vehicle, even if it's the same make, the same discipline of racing, you're always going to win because you spent more money on your car.
That's true. Where It's different in the other sports because, the bat's the same, the ball's the same, and the rules are the same, and you could pay for talent, but you're not, like you said, you're not in racing where this guy's got more money to spend on his car than the back marker guy does. So, yeah, I totally agree with that point.
Yeah, you will. It's like you just always lose. Like, we both bought, like a 2020 Ford Mustang stock, both of them stock, and then all I did was put in a turbocharger. I'll always beat you.
Yep. That's funny.
Anyway, with that being said, my time is up now. I'm going to be off.
Okie dokie. I was just going to say, you're about ready to wrap it up because it's almost my bedtime. It's 9:25 p.m. here on the East Coast.
East Coast.
Well, Dimitri,
6:25 here, so dinner time.
Yep. I want to thank you for being on tonight. It's a totally different conversation than I normally have. I was looking forward to it. So
thanks for having me.
Good luck on you. Good luck on your racing out there. And I think except for one guy down in Australia, you're the furthest away from my location that I've had on. So Dimitri,
take that as a compliment.
Dimitri Ganotsionis from Vancouver, British Columbia, iRacer, racing fan, video game fan, going back to the days of Coleco, back to my time. Thanks for stopping by on the Sim Racing Podcast, and maybe we'll touch base a couple of months from now and see what's going on in the racing world.
It was good to me, Greg.
Okay, have a good night, sir.
You too. Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Interesting conversation. Dimitri Ganotsionis from Vancouver, British Columbia, joining us here tonight to talk racing. That's what we do on the Sim Racing Podcast. And I want to thank him again for stopping by. Upcoming episodes, we've got quite a few coming up tomorrow night. That's April 11th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Michael Overstreet from American Sim Motor Racing will be here to talk about all the different series they run. And then on Friday, 4:14 at 8 p.m. is Justin Dilt and Ryan Chapman from Elevated Motorsports. And we even got some more coming on pretty soon in a couple weeks. So if you want to talk racing, just give me a holler. You can look me up on Facebook on the Joe Sixpack Racing page, or my personal page, Greg Draiss, or the Joe Sixpack Podcast page. You can reach me there. You can check the Joe Sixpack Racing League out on... What are we on? We're not on Twitter anymore. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. And, of course, we're right here live on Twitch. We broadcast live on Twitch. We also are on Spotify, Anchor, and most of the major podcasting platforms. And then tomorrow we'll upload this whole thing onto YouTube, where you can catch us right there. So the Sim Racing Podcast, I'm your host, Greg Draiss. Want to send a thanks out to the 802 Cup Series. That's where I race the next gen cars. Their social media guy and one of the admins there. Also want to thank sponsor for the Joe Sixpack Racing team that we have in our late model series. Dirtbag Clothing, an American original. And as their motto says, wear it till it stinks. So thanks to Dirtbag Racing, or Dirtbag Clothing out there, for sponsoring the Joe Sixpack Racing team. And we're going to mention you all over the place because it's just so cool to say, hey, we got a sponsor. And also Riptide Radio, Jeff Barefoot from the 802 Cup Series hooked us up with those guys. And they toss us, for every race, random winner gets $5 in iRacing credits. And if you want to find out what Riptide Radio is, it's Carolina Shag, Carolina beach music. The Carolina Shag is a dance, and as Jeff Barefoot will tell you, he goes, it's more than a dance, it's kind of a lifestyle. And I came across Carolina Shag Radio on satellite radio over the summer, and then listened to Riptide Radio, and it's music that you would have on at the beach. It is funk, it is Motown, it's jazz, it's swing, it's yacht rock, and like you said, it's a lifestyle. It's what you'd have on at the beach. So again, I want to thank Dimitri, for stopping by. And again, tomorrow night at 8 p.m., Michael Overstreet from American Sim Motor Racing will be right here talking about their leagues. And on Friday, 8 p.m., Justin Diltz and Ryan Chapman from Elevated Motorsports. And again, if you want to talk racing, and like I say, we all have a story to tell, and you can tell it right here on the Sim Racing Podcast with your host. That's me, Greg Draiss. Have yourselves a good night out there, and we'll see you on the track.